Welcome, everyone. I hope there's some great information in here. As Nancy said, it is a very fast-moving window of opportunity, and people are becoming savvier about it. So with the very specific links and opportunities in this PowerPoint, I do recommend you check them out as soon as possible and get your application going if it's prudent for you to do. And at the end of the presentation, my email address is in there at the Peale, and you are welcome. Please feel welcome to reach out if you have any questions while you're applying for things. And with that, we can begin.
Okay, Laura, I'm just going to start the screen sharing here and show your PowerPoint. One moment. Let's see. Okay.
Okay, so as most of you or many of you know, the Peale is a complete home for stories and laboratory for innovation. And during this COVID-19, what's been wonderful is the innovation of the Peale has been able to very quickly sort out ways, including webinars, for continuing being responsive to our audience and those we serve. Absolutely be sure to continue checking that website for everything regarding potential resources, workshops, etc. And as at the bottom of the screen you can see, don't hesitate to contact at info@thepealecenter.org with any questions or concerns. And as Nancy said, if you have resources you think would be helpful to share with the community, please let us know. That would be fabulous.
Sorry there, Laura. We got the next slide now?
Yes. About the Storyteller Grants. Grants, again, I just am reminding everybody, and so forgive me, most of you may know this, but they're not loans, they are literally gifts. So never hesitate to apply for a grant. It's a little like buying a lottery ticket. If you at least throw your name in the hat, you have a chance. So it is worth doing. It's worth taking the time. The biggest criteria is read what they're looking to fund with great detail so that you know if you're going to qualify. If you have any questions, again, about whether or not you might qualify, just feel free to reach out. Next. Here are some example links that I have found recently and in fact have helped a couple people apply for. The Artist Relief Fund has $10 million to give away, and it plans to do it in 4 rounds. It opened last Thursday, I believe, and it will close tomorrow. It's a flat $5,000 for any qualifying recipient. I recommend you look into it. And again, you'll see when you click the link, go to the site, theartistsrelief.org, there are, you'll see the 4 different time periods that they plan to submit or to accept submissions. And this is a fund basically funded by large foundations and organizations. So definitely look at it. If there's no way you can get it done tomorrow, just think about the next round submitting for it. Baltimore City-based artists can apply for BOPA's Mayor's Individual Artist Project. That is not a COVID-19, but it's active right now. And it is again, I believe it's $5,000 cap. And it closes on Sunday the 26th. So again, definitely look into it. It is subject to the amount of funding that is in the pot, so to speak. So getting it in is, again, it's worth doing if you have a project that qualifies under their criteria. And I just wanted to say, it's with fiscal sponsorship, which this grant requires. Normally the Peale is happy to do that, but in this case, because we're applying as an organization to a similar fund that's part of the same grant cycle, we can't be your fiscal sponsor and apply ourselves. So, if you have any questions about finding a different fiscal sponsor, just let us know. But it would be any nonprofit that you tend to work with, higher education, regular education, other smaller nonprofit, arts nonprofits that you work through. Most nonprofits are happy to do it. Next. So right now, Maryland State Arts Council does have an emergency grant for artists, and that is open at the moment. So I recommend you click on that and double check. It's, they have several, you'll see when you go to the page, there's several tiers of funding, but there is absolutely one for individual independent artists. So please take a look at that. The Baltimore Office of Promotion and the Arts also has an emergency artist relief fund. That is a $500 grant for people who apply and qualify, and that again is until the money runs out. So I would do it sooner than later. I know they're trying to turn them around rapidly. So do check that out. And then the Foundation for Contemporary Arts also has grants for emergency funds, and that is for both visual and performing arts. So storytellers qualify within that realm, and I absolutely encourage you to look at that one as well. And here I'll add one more comment. If you look at them all and you kind of pick 2 or 3 that you would be interested in applying to, my recommendation would be do the one that is the most rigorous first. Any of them that require a little more information. That way you've done the work, and when you go to apply for the other ones, basically you're prepared. That's generally a good rule of thumb. So for instance, and again, I'll use the Artist Relief Fund as an example. It is not overly taxing what they're looking for. They're looking for things like, how have you been impacted? What did you have planned? For instance, how much income do you project you've lost or you will be losing because you can't perform, or you can't perform in the way in which you had planned for the next several months and the last 2. So they're the kinds of questions they're going to ask. They're going to ask about your artistic experience and career. Just start to get those notes in your mind. And I would, again, click on several of these opportunities and look at the kinds of questions, and then collect your thoughts before you go in to apply. Some of them may require tax information. So if you have not done 2019, then 2018 would still be valid, since 2019 now are not due until July. But not all of them are requiring that. 1 or 2 do. So be aware of that. Okay. Next.
Hang on, let's see, why is this not advancing? 1 second. There we go.
Yes, and so here is a good example. If you go to BOPA Arts, .submittable, and you sign up for a free account, and by the way, all these applications are free. None of them have a fee. So that's good to know. There are very general questions at the beginning, and it's a 500 to 100 word maximum on each question. So that gives you an idea of what they're looking for. It's fast, it's summary version information. So it's about your creative practice, about your emergency. Is it rent? Is it materials? Is it whatever it is? Paying your utility bills, what you would do with the money, and how much income lost anticipated. And then in that case, you're allowed to attach up to 5 files that are, representative of your practice, of probably example programs that you normally do and are probably not going to be able to do. And as most grants are, but not all, mind you, you can save a draft and return to it later. It's most grants that do not allow that will state that up front. And in those cases, what I advise is you read all the questions and copy them, cut and paste, copy and paste into a document, prepare your answers, and then upload all the answers at one time before you submit. But the majority of grant applications do provide the opportunity to save a draft and return to it later. And again, even if you have any technical questions on applying for any of these, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions as you make your way through this. Here we have some additional resources. It's been, frankly, I've been bombarded, fascinatingly enough and wonderfully enough. The philanthropic community, governments, large arts funders, they do all feel exceedingly responsible to reach out and help during this crisis. And one of the things I noticed in the very, very beginning was that there were just tons of information coming in and kind of funneling it down and drilling it down to, what's really valuable. And, many of the organizations were repeating what other organizations, or they just threw you, 20 links without any identification of what they mean, which can be overwhelming and which also ceases to, really deliver good information. These resources that I have listed here, the COVID freelance artists resources, more freelance artists resources, the Maryland Lawyers for the Arts, that is a good one to get involved with for a million reasons, not just for this case, but this organization is great. I've met the CEO, and they are very devoted to helping artists with even legal issues, and most of their work is, of course, pro bono. So that is a good organization to check out. And that's actually a national organization, but our Maryland one is based in Baltimore. So that's wonderful. Americans for the Arts has a very specific area just for artists, and you can go in and select the criteria to find best resources for you. Be More Art, that was a great article on arts-related resources in the age of COVID-19. And that was, released this month. So I would absolutely advise reading that and looking into that. Next. And then I'm sure some of you have heard about the SBA, PPP, and EIDL, and those acronyms were thrown around in great haste when this blew open. It didn't last long. The money was expended much faster than the government thought. They just approved this morning a second round of money. And my guess is, as I watched the SBA first round, some of the criteria kept shifting and changing. I would imagine some of it has shifted yet again. But it is also eligible to self-employed sole proprietorships, which that is what most artists technically are. So it is worth looking into. The tricky part and the somewhat off-putting part, I would say, for people is because it's SBA, it is all considered a loan program. The truth of it is, with PPP, which is really if you had employees, if you had people working for you, multiple people getting checks, it might be a consideration. Otherwise, it would be the emergency injury disaster loan. They will forgive, if you follow the criteria, they forgive the loan. So with EIDL, you can request a loan, but there's a $10,000 advance, and they will forgive that as long as you use it as the criteria stipulates, which is basically supporting yourself and your rent and utilities and your health insurance. So there will be much to watch on that, but again, it is going to go fast. And if it opened today, I would say take a look and get it, applied to rapidly. I did apply to both programs for different people and organizations in the first round. And I will say the applications are not terrible. They're really not that hard to navigate. SBA has made them pretty straightforward. So don't be shy about checking that out and seeking that as a good resource. It's worth throwing your hat in. You do have to have taxes either 2018 or 2019. That is one stipulation. Ongoing resources, and they are, keeping updates, but they also have just regular granting opportunities for creatives, is Greater Baltimore Cultural Alliance. Absolutely check their resource link. The National Storytelling Network, that one, of course, is completely focused on storytellers. And therein lies American Library Association as well. The Awesome Foundation grant is, they consider themselves kind of a micro grantor. They're $1,000 grants. And again, it's not an overwhelming application. It's been ongoing for quite some time. I would imagine they're getting requests right now, but I think it's valuable to consider getting that one in as well. And I just wanted to touch on fiscal sponsorship again. So, fiscal sponsorship means a nonprofit. Sometimes there are grants that individual artists are allowed to request provided they have a fiscal sponsor. And that just means you have to have a 501c3 organization virtually be your sponsor, and that's because the funder has to give the money to a nonprofit. It cannot give it to individuals. The Peale has done this for numerous people and is happy to do that. Know that when, like that one grant I mentioned where we would not be able to help out with the fiscal sponsorship, know that other organizations, many do it for free. I would say the majority of organizations I know do. Sometimes organizations will ask for a small fee, 9 to 10% of a grant. So just know that and make sure you have clarification if you do use someone. And a good example of fiscal sponsorship discussion is the MSAC grant that's for presenting and touring. It talks about that. It's for individual artists, but a nonprofit has to sponsor. So it's don't ever be put off about applying for a grant that requires a fiscal sponsor. It's something that most nonprofits, particularly art nonprofits, are very aware of and will happily do for individual artists. So thank you all for being here, and I am open to any questions you may have, as is, I'm sure, Nancy, our wonderful executive director, and all the other team here. So please feel free to let us know. I believe in the participants link, there's a raise your hand, and then Nancy can unmute and we can answer any questions you may have. And my email address is right there, grants@thepealecenter.org. Please feel free to reach out with any question, comment, anything at all.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Really appreciate your doing such a concise summary. I think in these days of most of our lives being online, it's nice to have bite-sized chunks of information rather than hours and hours of lectures. So that was amazing how much you packed into such a short time, and all very, very helpful. So as Laura said, we can answer any questions that you might have now, and we'll see how this muting and unmuting goes. It may be worth just throwing open the microphones, but let's give it a try. You're very welcome to either type questions into the group chat, or you can just raise your hand and I will unmute you. However, let's see here. I'm a little bit concerned that I'm not seeing hands raised. I'm just to make sure that there's not a technical glitch here. David, could I ask you to raise your hand and let me make sure that I'm seeing that hands are being raised so I can unmute people? Alice is raising her hand. Okay, great. So that is indeed working. Let me unmute Alice in case she indeed has a question there.
Well, it's not a question, but it might help to explain how to raise your hand.
Yes.
If you look in the participants list, which is at the bottom of the screen, you will see your name and a bunch of other people's names. And then at the bottom of that list of names, you'll see raise hand, yes, no, go slower, go faster. You just click where it says raise hand. It's a little blue icon, and it will raise your hand. I'm done.
Thank you, Alice. All right. Really happy to see some of the great storytellers that we know and love at the Peale who have joined us today, and hope that you'll be able to work with us on some future programs. If you have questions about specific projects that you're trying to fundraise for, feel free to throw those out now too. Okay, well, it looks like we've got, we've wrapped things up to most folks' satisfaction anyway. I'll just add a few closing notes here. And if anybody thinks of a question in the meanwhile, by all means, go ahead and raise your hand, or otherwise put a question into the chat. I'm just trying to enable my video again. Let's see here. There.
Nancy, this is Alice.
Yes.
Did you see Emma's question in the chat?
Oh, I didn't. Sorry. Could you read that out?
Sure. Are the grants all related to relief, or are they project specific? I think that's a question for Laura.
There is a mix. So feel free, look at them all. Some of them are even, you planned to do a project, now you can't, or some of them are project-based. So I would take a look at those links in particular and see how they're worded. And even if they are quote unquote relief related, it doesn't mean they're not project related, if that makes sense. So in other words, it may be relief money, but it may help you get a project done because you can't, pull in income from another capacity that might have helped you. So it's really a question of reading them. Now, the one, for instance, BOPA 500, that is a direct emergency, $500 for, worried about rent, worried about health insurance payment. But there is a selection for other, and you could say, I'm worried about getting a project done. So it's, I would take a look at the particulars, and if you again have any questions on the guidelines of one that seems to fit your situation, just let me know, and I'm happy to clarify specifically for you and what your project is, and happy to help you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for that, Emma, and thank you, Alice, for flagging it. Anything else? Any other questions? I'm going to just pause our screen share there. So just a couple of things I wanted to add in closing. This session, this webinar was made possible thanks to a grant from the Baltimore National Heritage Area. They very generously supported our creating a series of capacity building workshops for storytellers. We held 3 in the fall, and we're about to launch 3 more this spring when the pandemic struck. So those have all moved online. This is the first of those. Stay tuned for some others on that will include topics like immersive storytelling online and inclusive and accessible storytelling online, led by my colleagues Robin Marquis and David London, and also with participation from our friends at Virtual Ability, who've been helping facilitate this webinar today. The Baltimore National Heritage Area is also sponsoring a series of lectures on Baltimore history called It's More Than History. And the final lecture in that series will be this Friday at noon. It is also free, thanks to their support. And please join us to hear Dr. Sylvia Hollis talk about suffragette history in Maryland and beyond, and lots of different aspects of it. And what she's really doing is trying to mine that history to glean what we need to know in order to carry on the crusade for civil rights and universal suffrage today. Also stay tuned, where we will be offering more virtual tours of the Peale. I think we might have a link earlier in the chat, or perhaps Robin, you can post that now. If you'd like to go inside the Peale and see what it looks like, and you've never been there before, you can actually already take a virtual tour with David and me, and we will be doing more live tours coming up, focusing on various parts of the Peale history. And this is just, you're the first folks to know outside of our organization. We are even working on launching a virtual Peale in Second Life. Again, thanks to facilitation and support from Virtual Ability and Linden Lab themselves. Soon you will be able to visit the Peale in Second Life, which is a virtual world where you can go and do things that aren't necessarily possible in video conferencing, like literally run into friends. And we actually already have an exhibition in Second Life of work by Dr. Natrice Gaskins. She is a Baltimore-born artist and a computer scientist and educator, now based up in Boston. And she does beautiful digitally generated works that are very complex in their genesis and very enchanting in their realization in the real world. So if you're already somebody who uses Second Life, feel free to drop in. We'll include the link to that in the chat and on the web page here. But if you've never been in Second Life before, perhaps Alice, I could ask you to include a link to Virtual Ability in the chat, where folks can go and get support on creating an avatar and gaining access to that virtual world. It really has been, I hadn't been into Second Life in more than 15 years, and we started to use it again last month as part of the MW20 online conference that we participated in. And it's been a really fascinating new world. So I'd love for you all to come and try it out and see Natrice Gaskin's exhibition, and hopefully join us there to help launch the virtual Peale in Second Life soon. Last call for any questions.
I just wanted to say one thing, Nancy. When you post the PowerPoint, the links to all those opportunities will be live. I mean, they will be.
Yes, that is exactly right. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay. I'm just, I'm going to add a couple more links in the chat here before we sign off. And thank you again, Laura. Thank you for everybody who helped make this happen. Thanks, Lorraine. Thanks, Alice. Thanks, David. Thanks, Robin. And thanks to our friend Heather Shelton, who's lurking there somewhere as well. We hope to see you soon.